What if the quiet man mopping your office floor every night was once trained to walk into gunfire without blinking? What if the person everyone overlooked, the one in the gray uniform pushing a cleaning cart past the elevators, was the only person standing between his boss and a bullet? Tonight's story will make you think twice before you ever look past someone in a uniform again. Stay with me till the end, because what this man did will remind you that kindness and courage often were the most invisible clothes. Before we dive in, if you believe that ordinary people can carry extraordinary hearts, hit that subscribe button right now. Give this video a like if stories about quiet strength move you, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This channel is called Kindness Waves, and every single week we bring you true-to-life stories about everyday heroes who choose love, courage, and kindness even when the world isn't watching. Now, let's get into today's story. Daniel Reyes had not always pushed a mop bucket down a hallway. 10 years earlier, he had pushed through jungle heat, desert sandstorms, and the kind of darkness most people only see in nightmares. He had been a Navy SEAL, one of the quiet warriors who never spoke about what they did, who came home and folded themselves back into ordinary life like nothing had ever happened. But something had happened. Everything had happened. And when Daniel finally hung up his uniform for the last time, he thought the hardest part of his life was behind him. He was wrong. His wife, Elena, had passed away 2 years after he left the service. A car accident on a rainy Tuesday evening took her instantly, and it took a piece of Daniel with her. What remained was a 6-year-old daughter named Sophia, wide-eyed and confused, asking why mommy wasn't coming home. Daniel remembered sitting on the edge of her bed that night, trying to find words that didn't exist, and realizing that no amount of training could have prepared him for this kind of battlefield. This one had no rules, no missions, no team beside him. Just him, and a little girl who needed him to be strong when he felt like he was drowning. He tried corporate security work first, using his background to land a decent job. But something about being trapped behind a desk, watching cameras instead of people, made him restless. He tried consulting, but the pay was inconsistent, and inconsistency was something he could not afford with a daughter to raise. Eventually, pride took a back seat to necessity. A janitorial position opened up at Halstead Tower, a gleaming 40-story office building downtown that housed one of the largest logistics and shipping companies in the country, Meridian Freight Solutions. The pay was steady. The hours were nights, which meant he could take Sophia to school every morning and be home to walk her to the bus. It was in every practical sense exactly what his life needed. So Daniel became the man in the gray uniform. He was polite, quiet, and almost invisible to the hundreds of employees who walked past him every single day. Executives in tailored suits would step around his cart without a glance. Junior staff would sometimes toss a quick thanks over their shoulder, barely making eye contact. Nobody looked twice at the janitor. Nobody ever does. But Daniel didn't mind the invisibility. In fact, there was a strange comfort in it. After years of high-stakes missions where every move was watched, analyzed, and depended upon by his team, there was peace in simply existing in the background. He mopped floors, emptied trash bins, cleaned glass doors until they sparkled, and went home to make pancakes with Sophia on weekend mornings. It wasn't the life he once imagined, but it was his life, and it was enough. What nobody at Halstead Tower knew, what none of them could have guessed, was that beneath that gray uniform was a man who had once been trained to notice everything. Daniel couldn't turn that part of himself off, even if he tried. He noticed which employees came in early and which ones lingered too long near the loading dock. He noticed unfamiliar cars in the parking garage. He noticed body language, the way people held tension in their shoulders, the way eyes darted when someone was nervous or hiding something. It was second nature to him, like breathing. He had trained his mind for years to read a room the way most people read a headline, and it never stopped, even while pushing a mop. The CEO of Meridian Freight Solutions was a woman named Patricia Callahan. She had built the company from a small regional trucking outfit into a logistics giant with contracts across 3 continents. She was sharp, driven, and known throughout the industry for both her brilliance and her fierce protection of her employees. Patricia worked late almost every night, often the last light glowing on the top floor long after everyone else had gone home. Daniel had crossed paths with her occasionally in the hallway, always offering a polite nod, which she always returned with a warm, if brief, smile. She was one of the few executives who actually looked at him when she said thank you. One evening, about 8 months into his job, Daniel noticed something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. It was a man in the lobby, dressed in a delivery uniform that didn't quite match any of the usual courier companies that serviced the building. The man's badge looked slightly off, the lamination too new, the photo slightly blurred in a way that experienced eyes would catch, but casual ones would miss. Daniel watched him linger near the security desk far longer than any legitimate delivery required, scanning the elevator bank, memorizing camera placements. It was subtle. It was the kind of thing 99 people out of 100 would walk right past. Daniel was not one of the 99. He said nothing that night, but he made a mental note, the way he had been trained to log details that might matter later. Over the following 2 weeks, the same man appeared 2 more times, always with a different disguise, a maintenance jacket once, a delivery uniform for a different company the next time. Each time, his path led him closer to areas near Patricia Callahan's office and the executive elevator. Daniel began to understand, with the certainty of someone who had spent years reading threats before they materialized, that something was being planned. This wasn't random. Someone was studying the building, studying its rhythms, studying her. It would have been easy for Daniel to stay silent. It would have been easy to tell himself it wasn't his job, that he was hired to clean floors, not chase shadows, that getting involved could risk the stability he had worked so hard to build for Sophia. But kindness, real kindness, isn't about doing what's easy. It's about doing what's right even when it's inconvenient, even when it's risky, even when nobody would blame you for looking away. Daniel began quietly documenting what he saw. He noted times, descriptions, and patterns in a small notebook he kept in his uniform pocket. He didn't want to cause panic or make accusations without proof, but he also refused to let a threat against a woman who had never done anything but treat him with basic human decency go unspoken. One night, after most of the building had emptied, he found himself alone in the elevator with Patricia. She looked tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying the weight of hundreds of employees' livelihoods on her shoulders. Long night, Daniel said quietly, breaking his usual silence. She smiled faintly. They're all long nights lately. Big contract negotiations. Lots of pressure. She studied him for a moment, as if noticing him fully for the first time, not just as the janitor, but as a person. You're always here so late too. Family waiting for you. A daughter, Daniel said. She's 6. Waits up for me sometimes, even though she shouldn't. Patricia's expression softened. That's sweet. Hold on to that. In this business, it's easy to forget what actually matters. She hesitated, then added, You seem like you pay attention to things more than most people who walk these halls. It was an opening Daniel hadn't expected, but he took it. Ma'am, I don't want to overstep, but I've noticed some things over the past couple weeks that concern me. About your safety. What followed was a conversation that changed everything. Daniel explained, carefully and without exaggeration, what he had observed. He described the man, the mismatched badges, the patterns of movement, the specific attention paid to the executive floor. He watched Patricia's expression shift from polite curiosity to genuine alarm as the pieces he laid out began forming a picture too consistent to be coincidence. Patricia didn't dismiss him. She didn't laugh it off as the overactive imagination of a nighttime janitor. Instead, she asked him one question that revealed just how perceptive she truly was. How do you know how to spot something like that? Daniel paused, weighing how much to reveal. Then, quietly, he told her the truth. He told her about his years in the Navy, about missions he couldn't fully describe, about the training that had once been his entire identity before it became something he tucked away beneath a gray uniform. Patricia listened without interrupting, and when he finished, there was a long silence in that elevator, the kind that carries the weight of a decision being made. I need you to help me, she finally said. Not as a janitor, as whatever you actually are. Over the next several days, working quietly and discreetly, Daniel helped Patricia's security team piece together what was actually happening. It turned out that Meridian Freight Solutions had recently secured a massive shipping contract that had pushed out a competitor with far murkier business practices, a company with ties to individuals who did not take financial losses gracefully. The man Daniel had spotted was part of a small group hired to intimidate and possibly harm Patricia in an effort to force the company into backing out of the deal. It wasn't Hollywood-level espionage. It was something far more grounded and far more real. The kind of quiet, calculated threat that happens in the business world more often than people realize, hidden behind polite handshakes and boardroom smiles. Daniel's information allowed the security team, working alongside local law enforcement, to identify the individuals involved before anything could happen. On the night everything came to a head, Daniel was there. Not as a Navy SEAL charging into action with weapons drawn, because that wasn't his role anymore, and it wasn't what the moment called for, but as the calm, observant presence who recognized the exact moment the man in the fake maintenance uniform slipped past a checkpoint using a stolen access card. Daniel intercepted him in a service stairwell, using nothing more than his voice, his presence, and the quiet, unmistakable authority of someone who had once commanded rooms far more dangerous than an office stairwell. The man, startled and outmatched by someone he had assumed was just building staff, surrendered without incident. Police arrived minutes later. Patricia was safe. The threat was neutralized without a single person getting hurt. And the story could have ended there, a quiet resolution known only to a handful of people. But Patricia Callahan was not the kind of person who let quiet acts of courage go unnoticed. The following week, she called Daniel into her office. Not the janitor's supply closet where he usually received instructions, but her actual office on the top floor, with its wide windows overlooking the city. She thanked him, genuinely and without corporate formality, for what he had done. Then she asked him a question that would change the direction of his life once again. What do you actually want to do, Daniel? Not what you have to do. What do you want to do? Daniel, caught off guard, admitted that he missed feeling useful in a way that used everything he had trained for, not just his ability to notice danger, but his ability to protect people, to think ahead, to keep others safe. Patricia didn't hesitate. Within a month, Meridian Freight Solutions had created a new position, Director of Executive Security and Risk Assessment, built specifically around Daniel's skills. It came with a salary that finally let him breathe easier about Sophia's future, health benefits that gave him peace of mind, and most importantly, dignity restored to a man who had never actually lost it, but had simply been waiting for someone to see it. What made this story remarkable wasn't just Daniel's training or his courage, though both were extraordinary. It was Patricia's kindness in a moment that mattered most. She could have thanked him with a bonus check and moved on, treating the whole event as a security matter to be filed away. Instead, she saw him. She recognized his worth beyond the uniform, beyond the job title, beyond the assumptions that so many people make about who deserves opportunity and who doesn't. That single act of true seeing, of valuing another human being enough to ask what they truly wanted, rippled outward in ways neither of them could have predicted. Daniel used part of his new salary to start a small scholarship fund at Sophia's elementary school for children of military veterans. Something he had wished existed when he was struggling in those early years after Elena passed. He began mentoring young veterans transitioning out of service, helping them see that their skills had value even in civilian life, even in places that seemed to have nothing to do with combat or courage. He often told them the same thing Patricia had once told him. Hold on to what matters. It's easy to forget in the noise of everyday life. And every single one of them remembered that a woman who ran a massive company took the time, on an ordinary Tuesday night, to actually look at the man behind the mop cart and ask him what he needed. Sophia, now older, often asked her father to tell her the story of the night he saved his boss. Daniel always tells it the same way, humbly, without exaggeration, always ending with the same lesson. It wasn't the Navy training that made the difference that night, not really. It was the willingness to speak up when silence would have been easier. It was Patricia's willingness to listen when dismissal would have been easier. Kindness, real kindness, often shows up not in grand gestures, but in small choices, the choice to notice someone, the choice to believe them, the choice to see potential where others see only a uniform. Somewhere in this world right now, there's someone quietly holding extraordinary strength, wisdom, or kindness inside them, waiting for someone else to simply notice. Maybe it's the person who delivers your mail, the cashier who always remembers your order, the quiet coworker who never speaks up in meetings. We walk past so many stories every single day without ever knowing what someone has survived, what they're capable of, or what they truly need. Daniel's story reminds us that dignity isn't determined by job titles, and kindness isn't measured by how much attention it draws. So today, let this story be a reminder to slow down and truly see the people around you. Say thank you and mean it. Ask a question and actually listen to the answer. You never know whose life you might change, or whose hidden strength might one day change yours.